Until relatively recently, if you were after a mid-size hybrid SUV, you had a choice of a Toyota RAV4 or a Toyota RAV4. But now there is another option, the Kia Sportage. Welcome to it, this week's edition of Four Wheels and a Seat. I'm Alex Dalrymple, and week by week I do a new car review in a very simple, straightforward, easy to understand way for people who might be looking for a new car to buy and don't know which way to turn. Make sure you don't miss an episode. Please do hit the subscribe button down below, the notification bell, and if you enjoy the video, give me a like. The Sportage has been on our roads in this current form for the last few years, and they're everywhere. They come in about 13 different flavours, and outwardly they all look pretty much the same. This particular model is a top-spec hybrid GT line. But in white, I don't know, this looks kind of like a low-spec rental car. The Sportage shares a lot of componentry with its cousin, the Hyundai Tucson. But outwardly, the two cars look extremely different, and you can really notice that up here at the front with the boomerang-shaped LED driving lights. It is a bit of a shame, though, that they don't use these as turn indicators, because I think that would look amazing. There's also just a mere suggestion here of the signature Kia Tiger Nose grille. The Sportage rides up reasonably high. There's a good amount of ground clearance. The all-wheel drive versions of this car are actually good for a bit of light off-roading, although I probably wouldn't try that in this front-wheel drive car. Speaking of wheels, 18 inches, they're just a little bit small. I think bigger would look better, but I guess the trade-off for that is a smoother ride. One thing that is not small, though, is the panoramic sunroof. It takes up the entire length of the roof, and it looks amazing to look through. The rear looks really good too. I like these LED light clusters with the red lights that sort of ring around the outside. It's good design, and under the powered tailgate there is plenty of stowage room for your luggage and baggage here in the Sportage. 586 litres of space. In fact, knock down the rear seats, you can expand that to 1900 litres. Under the bonnet, and we find a 1.6 litre four-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine that's mated to an electric motor, and together they output 169 kilowatts of power and 350 newton meters of torque, with average fuel economy coming in at around about 4.9 litres per 100 kilometres. I've been getting closer to 6.7 myself. That's probably more to do with my lead-footed driving. Now, although those performance numbers aren't huge, they do actually move this rather large SUV along quite nicely. Inside, and the Kia Sportage GT line feels nice and premium. There's a good mixture of materials with soft touch up on top here. We've got some metal accents and some real wood across the middle. There's leather and suede. It's quite a nice place to be. The center console screen is 12 inches and is possibly the only thing that maybe lets this interior down, and it's just because the software that runs on this screen now looks a little bit aged. When it came out originally 2 or 3 years ago, it was state-of-the-art, no question, one of the best systems you could find. And just as a sign of how fast technology has moved on, the system now feels just a little bit old and could do with a bit of a redesign. It does everything you need it to do, but there are newer, sharper looking systems with better screens that do more in lower spec cars than this. So that's just something that Kia might need to improve on before too long. The sound system is by Harman Kardon, and I don't know, it seems to lack a little bit of bottom end. It's nice and clear, but just could do with a bit more oomph. Moving down, we've got that nice wood accent here across the middle, and my favorite bit of tech in here is definitely this touch screen underneath that controls the shortcuts for the center console screen, and it's also your climate controls, and you can switch between the two at the push of a button. It's a really clever and space efficient way of maximizing the amount of usability in this system with not taking up too much room. Underneath this very sturdy cubby lid here is a wireless phone charger, which unfortunately doesn't work for me with my Apple iPhone 14 and its cameras that stick out, so the contact with the pad doesn't really work. There's also a couple of USB-Cs and a 12-volt outlet here. A lot of the Sportages in the lower spec have blanked out buttons here, but this being a top spec GT line model gets the full range of heating and cooling controls for your seats. Also the heated steering wheel controllers here as well. We've got a rotary dial for a gear shifter, the drive mode selector, mechanical cup holders, and a good sized center console bin. In front of the driver, the 12-inch digital instrument cluster, again, looks really good. There's 3 or 4 different display modes that change with whatever drive mode you're in, or you can select them by yourself manually. I personally like this very clean appearance here with the horizon on it that actually changes its appearance depending on the time of day. The steering wheel is leather accented, pretty much a standard Kia unit with quite a few controls on it, but it's really nice. Has a nice little metal finish down here as well. Paddle shifters up here as well. And the seats are leather with suede accents up here on top. That's actually an artificial suede, but you'd never know. They are heated and cooled, as I just mentioned, plus electric adjustment for the driver. The seating position, though, is a little bit high for me, actually. I'm just feeling like I'm sitting on top of the car rather than in it. I wish it would go just a little bit lower. But having said that, visibility out the front is really good. In fact, visibility all round is actually quite excellent. And there are blind spot monitors and cameras in the rear vision mirrors that actually display here on the instrument cluster when you turn an indicator on to help you see what's going on in the blind spots. Okay, sitting in the back seat of the Sportage. Now, I'm 190 centimeters tall and I'm behind my own sitting position, but these seats do move backwards and forwards when the driver gets in and out of the car. So this seat is a little bit further back than it would be if I was actually sitting in it, but even so, I've got a mountain of leg room here. So much room, nowhere near the seat in front of me, which is good because it's a hard plastic shell here, which is never very comfortable. There's a bag hook here too, nice sturdy pocket to put magazines in or a map or something. Why would you have a map in this day and age? A couple of air vents back here, but there's no rear zone of climate control for rear seat passengers, but that's all right. Headroom is a little bit limited with my hair just touching the ceiling here, but the view through that panoramic sunroof is just amazing. It is so clear and so big. You can just see the whole world through this. More of these nice wood accents here on the doors. Armrest with cup holders, USB-C ports just here on the back of the seats. So yeah, kids on a road trip would be pretty happy back here on the Sportage. In this GT line spec, it's really quiet, really refined. Like all the best hybrid SUVs, you really can't tell the difference between when this car is running on petrol or electric power. It's almost indistinguishable because it's so quiet. Kia tuned the suspension for the Australian spec Sportages right here, and it does make a difference because, you know, our roads aren't really that great, especially after it's been raining. There are potholes all over the place, and the Sportage does not get upset by any of it. It is a very smooth ride. So not only are there 13 different variants of the Sportage available in Australia, there's actually a shorter wheelbase version available in Europe. And here in Australia, in the US and Canada, we get the longer one. I guess they figure that we like bigger cars, I guess. But in Europe, this is actually classed as a compact. It ain't no compact here. Is the Sportage a turn-back car, a car so good looking that you have to turn back and look at it after you parked it? Probably not. I mean, look, it's not ugly. It's a really good looking SUV. It's just that there are so many of them on the road and they maybe just don't quite stand out from the crowd that much. So one of the things I really like about the Sportage Hybrid in this GT line spec is that it makes no pretenses whatsoever to be any kind of off-road machine. It's comfortable family transport for around town. There's no off-road drive modes. These cars are the station wagons of the 21st century, and the Sportage GT line fits that bill beautifully. So speaking of drive modes, there are only 3. By default, when you turn this car on, it's in eco mode. So it's already doing its best to save you fuel. If you're after a little bit more enthusiastic performance, you can switch into sport mode, and I noticed that the petrol engine kicks in then, and performance actually really does noticeably lift up. And then there's also smart mode where the car will adapt to the driving conditions. I like smart, I think it works well. Although the engine output numbers of this car are not huge, 169 kilowatts, 350 newton meters of torque, there's no lack of power. It still gets along really well, and this is quite a large mid-size SUV. It's not on the smaller side. You know, you get those smaller mid-size ones. This is definitely a larger mid-size SUV, and it doesn't in any way feel underpowered. The driving position is quite high. There are much higher cars on the road, of course, but I feel like I'm really looking down on most of the traffic in this car, and I think that's just mainly because the seating position within the cabin is high, as well as there being quite a bit of ground clearance underneath the car. So yeah, you do get used to it. It does feel a little bit awkward at first, especially if you've just stepped out of a car with a much lower driving position, as I did last week with the MG, but you get used to it pretty quickly. Now, it's really good having cameras in the wing mirrors displaying what's going on in your blind spot when you turn the indicator on, but the tricky thing is you've got to remember to look at it because it's displayed on the instrument cluster, and that's not really in your line of sight if you're merging to the left or right. You've got to almost look right before you merge left, and that doesn't really quite make sense. And sometimes it can just be easier just to turn your head quickly. Would I pick one of these over a RAV4? Yeah, I think I might, actually. I really, if anything, just prefer the interior. I think this is a much nicer place to be than the Toyota RAV4. And the technology in this car, even though I said before it is aging a little bit, it's still better than what you'll find inside a RAV4. Now look, there's nothing really wrong with a RAV4, of course. It is one of the world's best-selling cars, period. But the Sportage is really good too. If you've been thinking about a comfortable mid-size SUV that's economical and great to move the family around, you might have your heart set on a RAV4. But instead of just getting a RAV4 like everyone else, take a Kia Sportage for a test drive. It's really, really good.